What is up? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day. Back with some more Resident Evil 4 Remake gameplay for you. And today I got a topic that was out and about making the rounds about a couple of days ago, and I figured I'd make a video talking about it because I do have a little bit of an opinion on it. This is the old age on quality versus quantity argument, which, some people value the quality side, some people value the quantity side, some people are a little bit in between, but nonetheless, I figured I'd talk about it because it is about a game that I have personally played, and it also begs the question why I think the bigger topic at hand is something a lot of people just aren't seeing the forest for the trees with. But sit back and relax as I go through what it is that was making the news. But basically, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, which is a game I played when it first came out on the PS5. I really enjoyed it. I believe I platinumed it. Can't think of it off the top of my head, but I really enjoyed it. I remember playing the Ratchet and Clank games when they first came out, like the first one on a PS2. I played that alongside Jack and Dexter, and both of them were fun platformer games I had a huge blast in. I always tried to play them, get all the collectibles, and get everything done in them. But just fun games you can sit back and relax during that era of gaming. But nonetheless, Rift Apart got a review on the PC. I guess it just got ported to the PC. And PC Gamer made a review of it. And it's something they said in the review that got a lot of people talking. So basically, it goes like this. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is great on PC, but at $60 for a 10-hour story, it's not easy to recommend as we'd like. And that whole statement got a lot of people talking. A lot of people were basically thinking, hey, this isn't right. You can't be judging a game based on the length because there's so many games that are just overly long, more long than they need to be to have any business being. And then you got some people on the other side saying, I can understand that because if I'm paying, full price for a game, I want the game to last a little bit and just 5 to 10 hours. This one is 10 hours, but basically, a 10-hour type game, that's just not worth the price to pay for it. And it got me thinking, because I understand both sides of the spectrum, but at the same time, I also understand that having a little context is also very important because I feel like everyone's not seeing the forest for the trees in this situation. First off, I have no problem with what the reviewer said because at the end of the day, one thing I've always said is I don't necessarily have to agree with you, but one thing I do respect is I respect people being honest because I feel like that's the one thing in today's world that we lack so much of is people being honest. And what I mean by that is I'm not talking about like I say people are necessarily lying, but people are not telling the full truth in terms of how they really feel. Like they're saying things because they're worried about how everyone else is going to perceive them. And I feel like that gives a very bad, vague take on how a situation is because I feel like a lot of people find out later on that, hey, a lot of these opinions that everyone thought were so bad and they're afraid to say, they're not as unpopular or less common than you think. It's just a loud vocal group you hear on the internet. And I feel like, hey, just tell the truth how you really feel. I feel like a lot of things that are extremely popular aren't as popular as you think they are. And a lot of things that aren't as popular aren't as non-popular as you think. It's just everyone's not going full on how they really feel. This person obviously valued the length a lot more than probably someone like me. Like when I played Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, I didn't care too much about the length. I just cared about, was it something that I could play and enjoy like all the old Ratchet and Clank games, and I had a blast with for what it was worth. Some people might look at that and be like, hey, that time is not worth paying full price, and maybe it's better worth if it was on sale, not for a full price for the length it takes to beat. I'm someone who likes to do everything in games as long as I'm enjoying them. If I wasn't enjoying them, then I'd probably rush through them, but I like to do everything in the games, so it obviously takes me a lot longer to do all that stuff, so you can't just rush through, not unless the game's really that overly easy to do everything at the same time while playing it, but some are, some aren't. But with Ratchet and Clank, I never got that feeling. But it got me to thinking about it, because the whole quantity versus quantity argument is take something like, Final Fantasy 16. JRPGs by nature are long games. That's kind of the thing with them. They're not games. They take around like 100 hours to play and beat. People know that going into the game. It's not like they're going into it thinking, hey, we didn't know that. Like, this is the nature of the game. I always enjoy them being long because I want to be invested in a story, invested in the characters. I want to spend as much time as possible with them. But I don't look at those being like, hey, because they're long, they have no quality. That's just not true. JRPGs, the really good ones, have a lot of quantity and a lot of quality behind them. Like, this game has great story, enjoyable, excellent characters, a fun battle system, excellent music. There are some things I can think should have been better, but I can say that about any game. But the point is, this is an example of, hey, this one's got a lot of quantity, a lot of stuff you can be doing. It also has a lot of quality too. But I also look at the other side of the spectrum, the short end. Let's take Resident Evil, ironically another game franchise I love. They've always been extremely short games. I'm always amazed at people, especially if they're not really familiar with Resident Evil games, realizing that, especially the older ones, that these games are really short. Like, when you play a Resident Evil 1 for the first time, you don't have any, background information. You're just going there completely cold. It may take a playthrough, maybe sometimes 15 to 20 hours sometimes even longer as people get lost in the mansion. But once you realize what you're doing, where everything's at, where to go to get everything, you have people that easily beat these games in under an hour. But my question is, does that mean that it's not worth it? Does it have no, it has the quality, very quality gameplay, but does it not have the quantity? And I don't agree with that, because it has a lot of quantity. Because the thing about those games is, while you may have different modes and different difficulties and unlockables and stuff like that, the fun of those games is how many times you can replay them and beat them and see how fast you can beat them. I mean, it's a speedrunner's wet dream to do Resident Evil games. And you can see, what other challenges, not just challenges within the game, to get, the S+ rankings to unlock the infinite ammo weapons or other unlockables, but to also just, create your own self-challenges, like people playing the game without getting hit one time, or playing the game using a specific weapon, or playing the game without picking up anything. It's man-made challenges you bring to yourself. But I feel like those games, Resident Evil games, have a lot of quality, but also have a lot of quantity too. Maybe not in terms of the actual length to beat it, but quality and quantity in terms of just the actual amount of things you can do and how many times you keep coming back and playing it and playing it and playing it. Like, Resident Evil 4 Remake came out this year. I've almost put in over 200 hours in the game. Once you know what you're doing, they're not necessarily a long game. It's one of the longer Resident Evil titles, but they're not a long game to beat. So does that mean that that's just a low quantity type game because it's shorter? On the flip side, does that mean Final Fantasy is a high quantity game but low quality? No, they both are the exact opposite. They both have a perfect mix of both quantity and quality. And I feel like that's the problem with these arguments, is they're not taking the fact that one game is not one way and the other game is another way. You have a mixture of both. Some games can be, and I think that's the ones that get the most flack, but it's not just a whole common ground where the shorter games have no quantity and the longer games have no quality. That's just not true, especially for the ones that know what they're doing. But the thing I look at is everybody is also different. Everybody has different tastes, different things they view. And I don't blame the reviewer. That's just what he went into review, and that's something he valued more. And he was valuing more, having more length in a Ratchet and Clank game to the degree of which he was going through the main story. He wished it was longer, maybe more plans to explore, and that's perfectly fine. But everyone's different. I feel like people just got to address that, though. People got to understand everyone goes in there looking for something different. What I'm looking for in a Resident Evil game is not necessarily what everyone else is looking for in a Resident Evil game. But now I get to a little fun story that might trigger you, because when I read this thing, it made me think of this. But this also triggers me to a degree. But I have a best friend who has been in Resident Evil games longer than I have. I got in, if you don't know, Resident Evil 4 was my first ever Resident Evil game. His first was Resident Evil 2, the original one back on the PS1. So he's got a few years on me. But this is the funny part about him, is that my thing with games is when I play them, my two things I always ask in terms of did I enjoy it or not, or how much I enjoyed a game. Like, number one, my two questions I ask: was it worth the time I put into there, and was it worth the money I spent on it? That's the two questions I ask, whether I enjoyed a game or not. And he does not give either of those two questions I ask any validity at all, because he goes against both of those and everything I would ever... like, if I played the games as much as he does, oh my God, I'd be getting ripped off in my point of view. But hey, he's a different person than me. But basically, he's only played Resident Evil 2. He loves Resident Evil 2, loves it to death, but he's only played it one time, the original one. and he only played Leon Scenario A. So he didn't even play the Canon one, because obviously Canon is Claire A, Leon B. But he only played Leon A, and that's it. And I'm like, how do you only play the one scenario, and that's it? Oh, I just don't want to play it again. I don't want to pick it up and play it. So I'm like, why? You know there was multiple discs in that game. Why didn't you want to play it? I just didn't want to play it. I was like, did you not like it? Oh, I enjoyed it. I loved it, even though the alligator will always give me nightmares, and I always tease him about it. But, I just don't want to play it again. So you might think, oh, maybe he's young at the time. So you get to the remake, Resident Evil 2 Remake, and the same thing. He only played the first run with Leon. He did start the second run with Claire, but he just didn't want to finish it. I'm like, well, why not? These are short games. It's not like they're going to take a long time. You already know where everything is for the most part, because it's just going through the same thing again, a few differences. Oh, I just don't want to play it. I just don't want to do it. And I used to make fun of him and be like, you just don't want to see William Birkin's final form, because he never knew what the true ending really was. Because I kept telling him, hey, you didn't get the true ending until you beat both runs, and he'd get all mad with me. I actually showed it to him a few months ago, and it was funny to look at his expression, because he can only imagine Birkin's final form. It wasn't anything he ever thought it was. But the point is that I was just like, man, you're not even getting your value out of the game. Like, you just played the game one time, and that's it. And it doesn't take you long to beat it. But look, I just don't want to play it. I love the game, but I just don't want to pick up and play it. And I know it's probably triggering to hear right there and then and there. And he's like, oh, you call yourself a Resident Evil fan, and you only want to play the thing one time. And I always give him flack for it. But that's just how he is, and that's the thing I want people to understand. Everyone's different. Everyone values different things. Everyone has different things and weird mechanisms and mannerisms they have to do to get satisfaction out of something. Not everyone's the same person, and I think that's something we gotta respect at the same time. And it might be a little annoying or a little triggering, like it is there. And I'll admit it does. As a Resident Evil fan, that is baffling to me, but nonetheless, that's just how he goes about it. It's how he views things. It's how he wants to do it, and I respect him for that, because I feel like we need more people like that play things and play games the way they want to play it, and look for things the way they want to play it, and appreciate that stuff, because unfortunately too many people just look for the popular thing and just want to flock to that. But nonetheless, that is my opinion. I want to hear your guys' opinion. What do you value more, quantity or quality, or do you like a mixture of both? Let me know down in the comment section down below. But thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video, and hopefully I see you guys back in the next one. Thanks, and I'll see you all later. Peace.